Welcome back. Now, ArcelorMittal South Africa has opened its books. The steel producer has posted a first half headline loss of 1.1 billion rand. This is wider than what was reported in the previous comparable period. But when compared to the second half of last year, the loss has narrowed. And so AMSA is hopeful that there is a gradual recovery underway that will help it return to profitability. Joining me now for a look at the half-year performance and what contributed to the headline loss, as well as to unpack where the business is headed, is CEO Kobus Verster. Kobus, thanks so much for your time today. Now let's start there. A number of factors weighing on the company, from operational disruptions and the current economic environment not really boding well for the business. Just walk us through some of those challenges.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for the time. I think firstly, from a market perspective, underlying, we're at the bottom of the steel cycle. That's internationally. Obviously aggravated by domestic low growth, low demand. So you have a situation where your steel volume demand's down 3%, your price is down 3%, with marginal cost increases. So all of that's not good for profitability. But besides that, we were doing reasonably well up to the end of the 6 months when we were hit with blast furnace chill conditions, which is a once-off event, and it cost us just over 700 million, both in cost and cash flow. So hopefully that won't reoccur in the distant future, and we will have a better second half. And I think, as I said, at the bottom of the cycle, and hopefully we'll see some positive demand in South Africa following some positive political developments in our recent past.
Before we get into those political developments, I want us to talk about China for a second, a big player in the steel market. How has their dominance played out in terms of, today's financials and in terms of imports as well?
I mean, China's domestic economy is in a bit of a mess. I mean, they've, especially from a real estate perspective and infrastructure. So their exports has grown 24% in the period, and is expected to be more than 100 million tons of exports for the year. Now, obviously, that put pressure on steel prices all over the world, and you've seen many countries reacting to that. Brazil, Mexico, Europe, the US. So everybody's protecting their domestic market, and we are actually quite happy that locally ITAC has done the same, although not to the same level, but at least there's a movement in the right direction.
So some movements and positivity also playing out on that front. The group also has once again deferred that decision to close down its Longs steel business, saving thousands of jobs in the sector. Kobus, AMSA has been working with the government and other stakeholders, to keep that business going. Talk to us about those initiatives in place to turn the business around, and whether those initiatives are sustainable for growth further down the road.
Yeah, I think those start off with the export ban on scrap that wasn't extended. We're still advocating for the export tax to be eliminated, but at least there's one positive step. As I said, there was, although not on longs, but on flat products, there's a 9% safeguard introduced. We made good progress with Transnet on efficiencies and improvements that will is basically not a cost to them, but is a benefit to us and a benefit to them by improved efficiencies. And then there's other commercially more sensitive initiatives that we're working on. So our decision is not short term, it's long term, and we're glad that we can get to that position and saving, really thousands and thousands of jobs in this particularly difficult economic climate.
You touched on an issue I wanted us to delve deeper into, that ban on scrap metals. So we do know that government has not extended it post December, right? But there is still some uncertainty on whether it will end, right?
Well, that has not been extended, so it's actually terminated. But there's still a preferential pricing, a lower price, and then there's a 20% tax. So your local scrap is artificially low. And between scrap producing steel and vertical integrated, those two should always be roughly at parity. Now, by having a benefit to one, you actually create an unfair cost advantage to our competitors. And that's fine, but then you have to give me similar benefits in terms of my input costs, which I don't have.
All right. So, there's been renewed confidence, Kobus, post the national election, with the GNU coming together and a department that directly impacts the steel industry, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, welcoming a new minister, Pak Stow. Just take us through your thoughts on the changes in place and how they can just renew confidence within the sector as well.
Well, I think firstly on a national level, obviously it's very positive. I think we're more positive today than a year ago, all of us. Then before we start on a policy basis, I think internationally and locally interest rates will starting to come down. So that should create some stimulus for demand. Infrastructure spent, the new government's committed to that. And then from a specific DTIC perspective, I mean, the right noises around localization, beneficiation, those are all things that we support and will work with the government and ministers to see how we can all play a part in facilitating a better manufacturing environment.
Public and private partnerships have proven to work really well in the country. We've seen what's taken place with Eskom. We've seen what's been taking place with Transnet as well. Now, with everything in place, the group is quite optimistic about its prospects moving forward. So would you say that, the environment is getting to a point where it can be fertile for, the steel manufacturing industry?
No, I think so. The points I've just mentioned are all good indicators for increased steel demand. Fundamentally, we need an economy to grow beyond initially 3% and then closer to 5%. Then, I mean, we've got installed capacity in South Africa of almost 10 million tons. Our consumption is only 4.5 million. So there's a lot of capacity available once we start stimulating demand, but through real things, building dams, bridges, and those type of things that's obviously required from an infrastructure perspective and will also stimulate domestic demand.
Kobus, thanks so much for joining us and just updating us on the 6 months that was for AMSA. That was ArcelorMittal SA CEO Kobus Verster.